Have you ever wondered if a soul can recognize its own? If a heart, no matter how small or furry, can feel a pull towards a place it's meant to be? This is a story about that very question. A story about a dog with an unshakable sense of destiny. Our story begins in the crisp autumn air of Lawrence, Kansas, back in November 2018. At the Lawrence Humane Society, a black and white mutt with soulful eyes was just another face in the crowd. His name was Bob. He was a good boy, friendly and well-behaved, but he had a secret, a burning desire that no kennel could contain. You see, Bob was an escape artist, not for the thrill of the chase, not for the freedom of the open road, but for something much, much deeper. And his repeated escapes would soon become the stuff of local legend. The staff at the shelter were baffled. They'd come in the morning, do their rounds, and find Bob's kennel empty. The latch would be secure, the door seemingly untouched. It was like he'd just vanished into thin air. At first, they thought it was a fluke, a one-off. Maybe a volunteer forgot to secure the latch properly. But then it happened again, and again. Bob would disappear from his supposedly secure enclosure, a 4-foot-high chain-link kennel with the skill of a seasoned magician. The first few times, he didn't get far. He'd be found wandering the shelter grounds, sniffing around, almost as if he was looking for a specific exit. The staff would just chuckle, shake their heads, and lead him back to his run, making sure to double-check the lock. They nicknamed him Houdini Bob, but Bob was just warming up. His practice runs were over. One chilly morning, the shelter staff arrived to an all-too-familiar sight. Bob's kennel was empty. This time, however, he wasn't just roaming the property. He was gone. A full-scale search began. Staff and volunteers fanned out, calling his name, checking nearby parks and backyards. Hours turned into a full day, and a knot of worry tightened in everyone's stomach. Lawrence is a busy town. A loose dog faces 100 dangers. They put out alerts on social media, contacted local vets, and braced for the worst. The call came from a place they never expected. About a mile away from the Humane Society, nestled in a quiet neighborhood, stood the Prairie Wind Senior Living Community. The receptionist there had called animal control about a friendly but very out-of-place black and white dog who had strolled right through their automatic doors as if he owned the place. He wasn't scared or frantic. In fact, he seemed perfectly at ease, trotting down the halls, wagging his tail, and happily greeting the residents as they went about their morning. When the shelter staff arrived, they couldn't believe their eyes. It was Bob. He was calmly sitting by the feet of an elderly woman in a wheelchair, getting his ears scratched, looking as content as if he'd lived there his whole life. So how did he do it? The shelter staff put on their detective hats. They discovered that Bob, this clever, determined boy, had managed to unlatch his kennel, slip out of the building through a staff door that hadn't quite clicked shut, and then navigate a full mile of unfamiliar streets. He crossed roads, navigated sidewalks, and walked with a purpose that defied all logic. He had a destination in mind. He had walked straight to Prairie Wind. It was an incredible feat of navigation and sheer willpower. They brought him back, of course, reinforcing his kennel and scratching their heads in disbelief. A 1-mile journey to a specific random building? It had to be a coincidence, right? But was it a coincidence? Was it just a random building he stumbled into, seeking warmth and company, or was something else at play? A few weeks went by. Bob was on his best behavior. The escapes stopped. The staff started to relax. They featured him as the pet of the week, hoping his charming personality would finally find him a forever home. And then, he did it again. One morning, the shelter got that now familiar call. Hi? It's Prairie Wind Senior Living again. You're not going to believe this, but your escape artist is back. There he was, same spot, same happy demeanor, making his rounds among the residents who now greeted him like a returning celebrity. This time, he had squeezed through a small gap in the shelter's fence. He'd remembered the route. The 1-mile multi-turn journey was etched into his mind. He wasn't just wandering, he was commuting. The story started to spread. The local news picked it up. Houdini dog breaks out of shelter, breaks into nursing home. Again, people were captivated. This wasn't just a dog running away. This was a dog running to somewhere. The staff at the shelter were at a loss. They reinforced the fence, they added extra locks, they put him in their most secure run. They loved Bob, but their primary job was to keep him safe, and his crosstown adventures were incredibly risky. What was it about this place? What was drawing him there with such magnetic force? The staff at Prairie Wind had a theory. This wasn't just any building. It was a home filled with people who had time, patience, and an endless supply of affection to give. The residents adored his visits. He brought a spark of joy, an unexpected and delightful disruption to their daily routine. They'd light up when they saw him. They saved him treats. They told him their stories. For Bob, a dog who had been passed around and ended up in a shelter, maybe the quiet, gentle atmosphere and the constant, loving attention was exactly what his soul was craving. He wasn't looking for a house. He was looking for a community of laps to lay his head on. After his 4th successful escape and return to the senior living facility, everyone knew this was no longer a coincidence. It was a clear, undeniable pattern. This dog had chosen his home. He had interviewed for the job of resident companion, and he had decided to hire himself. The director of Prairie Wind, a man named Jimmy Stoddard, saw it too. He saw the joy Bob brought to his residents, and he saw the dog's unwavering determination to be there. After a discussion with the shelter, they all came to the same beautiful conclusion. Jimmy Stoddard, on behalf of all the residents and staff at Prairie Wind, officially adopted Bob. There was no more need for escapes. The shelter waived the adoption fee, calling it a scholarship for a dog who had so clearly earned his place. His journey was over. He moved into the nursing home, becoming a permanent, full-time resident. He was given free reign of the building, a cozy bed in the director's office, and a name tag that made it official. He wasn't a stray anymore. He wasn't an escape artist. He was home. Bob's days were now filled not with plotting escapes, but with bringing comfort. He'd wander the halls, his nails clicking softly on the linoleum, a comforting and familiar sound. He'd rest his head on the knees of residents watching television, offer a gentle lick to a hand reached out in greeting, and curl up at the foot of beds for a shared afternoon nap. He became a furry, 4-legged therapist, a silent confidant, and a constant source of unconditional love. For residents who were lonely or missing pets of their own, he was a godsend. So, I ask you again, can a soul recognize its own? Bob the dog, the escape artist from Lawrence, Kansas, seemed to think so. He didn't just find a home, he found his purpose. He followed a pull that no one could explain, but everyone could see. He kept breaking out of a place of safety and confinement until he broke into a place of belonging and love. He proved that sometimes the heart knows the way, even when the path is a mile long and filled with obstacles. And his story reminds us that home isn't always a place with 4 walls and a roof, but the place where you are needed, where you are loved, and where your soul finally feels at rest.